Pete's Dragon is directed by David Lowery, written by him and Toby Halbrooks. It's based on the 1977 film of the same name, directed by Don Chaffee, and this movie stars Oakes Fegley, Bryce Dallas Howard, Una Lawrence, Wes Bentley, Carl Urban, and Robert Redford. And Pete's Dragon is the simple story of a young boy named Pete, played by Oakes Fegley, who was orphaned at a young age and grew up in the woods with a dragon called Elliot. One day, Pete is discovered and Elliot is pursued by some lumberjacks who believe him to be dangerous. Now, I had never ever heard of the 1977 Pete's Dragon, and I don't think a lot of people have either, and I think this is like the perfect type of movie that Disney should remake into a live action film, because there's no real like sentimentality attached to this movie, and there are no die-hard fans who are gonna get angry over them remaking another film. And Pete's Dragon is, in my opinion, right behind The Jungle Book, the best live action remake they've done so far. It is an extremely straightforward movie, sometimes to its detriment. However, it is utterly beautiful to look at, and in my opinion, it has the single best musical score I've heard so far this year. Let's talk visuals first, especially with regard to the cinematography in this movie, which is done by Bojan Bazeli, which is just truly breathtaking. All these amazing sweeping shots of the forest that really kind of give them a mystical feel. It really settles you into the mood that this movie isn't like the most realistic thing ever, and it feels like a fairy tale or a fable. The production design in the movie is really on point as well, and what I like so much about how everything is designed in this movie is that they never explicitly state in the film that this movie is set in 1977, but if you check Wikipedia, they say in 1977. However, you really just feel the era through the way everything looks. And with regard to Elliot the dragon, he is just this fully realized and expressive CGI creation that really comes across as a real character, and you will just fall in love with this thing as easy as you might fall in love with E.T. or the Iron Giant. And I know some people might be bothered by the fact that Elliot is a fuzzy dragon, like he doesn't have scales, but it honestly didn't bother me that much after a while, and he really is just the cutest thing. And I really have to give credit to David Lowery, the director here, because his direction really makes this whole thing feel like a folktale. You know, it has this sort of maturity about it that makes it just a bit more special, almost spiritual compared to other children's movies. The scenes between Pete and Elliot in particular have this unspoken beauty about them that really kind of is more unexpectedly mature than anything I was expecting from a remake of a movie called Pete's Dragon. And the whole cast in the movie does a very good job. Bryce Dallas Howard, Wes Bentley, and even Robert Redford, while they didn't necessarily blow me away, I was always convinced that they were playing their characters. Carl Urban is in this movie, and when he is just like, when he shows his face and he uses an American accent, like I just can't unsee him as Bones from Star Trek, but he is very good. He gets to be funny in some parts, he gets to be really despicable in some parts, and he has this whole range of emotions to go through. But once again, 2016 is proving to be the year of really good child performances, because Una Lawrence and Oakes Fegley are very, very good here. Una Lawrence, who was in Southpaw, I believe, just has the most expressive eyes ever, and she's really great. And Oakes Fegley, who doesn't really have that much dialogue, really delivers just based on his physicality and his facial expressions alone. Now, the plot of Pete's Dragon is very, very straightforward, and the characters are admittedly one-dimensional, and they are archetypes more than anything. However, I have always said, and I still remain firm on this, that originality to me is not a good criteria for quality, because there are unique things out there that just aren't well executed, and there are unoriginal things out there that are just executed better than the other movies that did them before they even like sprouted into movies. And the execution is really what matters in Pete's Dragon, and I think they execute this very simple plot very well, because they do strip it down to the most essential elements and there's no excess on it. Another thing that makes Pete's Dragon special is the fact that it really respects its audience, even if the target audience is somewhat younger, because this movie isn't afraid to take its time with its pacing, and the editing here by Lisa Zino-Churgin really keeps the movie patient. It allows us to settle into the world and into this magic. And there are some really cool visual storytelling moments between Pete and Elliot where they don't say anything to each other, but you completely understand their relationship, and it's also credit again to Oakes Fegley for being just so good playing against this CGI creation. And this whole movie is very well sound designed, but I have to emphasize that the music in Pete's Dragon is really the best musical score I've heard so far in 2016. It's just so incredibly amazing. The score here is by Daniel Hart, and it's a very folk-inspired score that really propels the story forward, and again really just perfectly captures the folktale vibe of this movie and captures sort of the magic realism that goes on. The music here almost single-handedly reminded me why folk music will always be one of my favorite genres of music ever, and I don't even listen to it that much, but the music here is just so precious and so delicate, and it captures the emotions so well. And what I love so much about the score is that it builds up. You know, it starts out being very simple with very simple string instruments, but as the movie progresses, the music also swells and grows into more elaborate stuff. The music here really gives the movie most of its poignancy and emotion, and even the original songs in this movie from the likes of the Lumineers and Lindsey Sterling, who, you know, I'm not really big fans of either of those two acts, but their songs were really, really great here, and the way they work in the movie, like, it doesn't feel like they shoehorned in a bunch of pop songs. They fit the tone of the scenes they were in. As for my issues with Pete's Dragon, yes, they are archetypal characters in this movie. That doesn't really bother me. However, I really did want more from their relationships. You know, I felt like a lot of characters were left hanging. I didn't really buy that Bryce Dallas Howard's character was in a relationship with Wes Bentley's character. I didn't feel like she was the daughter of Robert Redford's character. And there are times when the pace in the movie does get a bit too slow for its own good, and the editing in these parts, you know, they don't really bounce from one character to another that well. However, I still think that Pete's Dragon is a really good movie, and, you know, this is the kind of movie that I know a lot of people will not like because it's not original. However, I think the aesthetic value alone in this movie is really worth checking out. Alright, so those are my thoughts on Pete's Dragon. If you guys have seen it, tell me what you thought about it, and whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.